Hey guys, what's going on? My name is Joe and welcome to a brand new video. And this is an idea I had when I was thinking about the fact TF2 Outposts closed, and I said in my TF2 Outpost video that I used to like going on TF2 Outpost and just like looking through all of my old unusuals, all the past trades I made just for that kind of like nostalgia, you know? And unfortunately now TF2 Outpost is closed, which means we can no longer access our TF2 Outpost profiles and look through past trades. However, I used to run a series on the channel called Unusual Showcases, where whenever I got an unusual I wanted you guys to see and like I was proud of, I'd literally just record myself with the unusual in game. And I was looking through my playlist of those and I was thinking like, there's a lot of unusuals here that I kind of miss and was almost proud of owning. So I've compiled a list of 10 of my favourite unusuals that I've owned to this current period in time. And there are some crazy unusuals here, guys. If you're a new viewer, the chances are you probably haven't seen any of these on the channel, but some of these unusuals are like crazy and like I'd do a lot to get these things back. But I mean, without further ado, we can just get straight into this. Some of the footage, if there is footage, will be provided from old showcase videos that I used to make. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the first hat. So this list isn't going to be in order, but the first unusual I wanted to talk about was my Scorching Flames Brotherhood of Arms, as at the time this thing was probably the most expensive unusual that I've owned to date. Now when I owned this thing it was 1,150 and the price has literally nearly halved since I owned it, and I think a lot of the unusual Brotherhood of Arms are crashing, especially the higher tier ones. But nonetheless, this is the most high tier unusual I'd say that I've owned. It was a Scorching Flames high tier all class hat and I loved this thing. I think the only reason I was downgrading it or ended up selling it was because I was scared of the price dropping, and I mean, it's probably a good job that I did end up selling it, otherwise I would have lost a pretty hefty amount of money. Next on the list was the first of many killer exclusives that I've owned, and I've owned a lot of higher tier ones, but my favourite killer exclusive that I ever owned was my Frostbite killer exclusive. And this thing wasn't even overly expensive at the time. I'm pretty sure it was around 400 to 600 keys. It's just, if you know me, you know I love Frostbite as an effect, and I feel like if you combo it with something like green energy, you can get some crazy looking combos. And I used to use this Frostbite killer exclusive on every single loadout. It was one of my favourite all class unusuals I've ever owned, and it was a pretty good price considering. Third on the list is one of the few Halloween unusuals that are on the list, and it's probably my favourite Halloween unusual I ever owned. It was one of the newer effects. It was a Haunted Phantasm Jr. Hong Kong Cone, and at the time I owned it, I'm pretty sure it still is now, it was a 1 of 1, and because it was a Halloween effect which was limited, this thing was never going to be unboxed again. Once again, this thing wasn't overly expensive. I'm pretty sure it was in the region of like 300 to 400 keys, but because it was 1 of 1, I literally could have just waited for years until the right buyer came along who wanted the hat and was prepared to pay anything. And that's always the beauty of owning 1 of 1s, is that you can just sit on it and just wait for someone who wants it enough to pay your price. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I did with this Hong Kong Cone. Definitely a really good investment. I'm pretty sure I profited a fair amount off of this. Coming in fourth on the list we have the Nebula Universal Translator, and I'm really not too sure why I'm putting this thing on the list. The only real appealing factor to me was the fact it was Nebula and it was all class. I think the Universal Translator as a hat really isn't nice, and it was kind of hard to put into a lot of loadouts, but Nebula is just such a beautiful effect, and the fact you can have this on all classes and for around 250 keys was just an offer I couldn't turn down, and it was really nice just to have a Nebula loadout. And I'm pretty sure around the same time I had a few purple energy miscs like the Bonk Boy and the Phantom, and I made some pretty nice combos with this thing. I remember after I owned one of these things and I realised the Universal Translator really wasn't a hat that appealed to me, I went to go after a Nebula Captain Spaceman, which is the all-class misc version with the Nebula effect, and I never got around to getting one of those. They always seem to be selling more than backpack.tf price, which was already like 800 keys, and I never ended up picking one up, but that may be an unusual I look to getting in the very far future, because it's going to take a while to save up for one of these. Coming up at the midway point on this list we have the Something Burning This Way Comes Brotherhood of Arms. And the reason I'm putting this on the list is because in yesterday's video, I was talking about the Poison Shadows Brotherhood of Arms, and it got me thinking, I really missed my Something Burning This Way Comes Brotherhood of Arms. It was an all-class unusual, and I think the three bat effects being Something This Way Comes, Poison Shadows, and Chiroptera Venata are just all really, really nice effects, and I love how they look in game, and it's the fact the flame lasts so long when it's behind you. It's just amazing to me. And yeah, for just 300 keys, this was probably one of my best, like, not so expensive all-class unusuals that I owned. And I mean, I owned a few unusuals on this list that were a lot more expensive, like a Sunbeams Brown Bomber for 900 keys, but the Brotherhood of Arms Something Burning This Way Comes just trumps it in every aspect in my opinion. Up next on the list, guys, was an unusual that, if I'm talking about unusuals, I really can't ignore. This is, of course, going to be my Burning Flames Pyro's beanie. And this is the unusual most people know me for. I've had this thing for years. I'm pretty sure the version I've got at the moment is a different version to one I had before. But in either way, this is like the unusual I'm known for. It's like probably my favourite pyro hat. And Burning Flames is one of my favourite effects, and the loadout I made with it is just kind of iconic. Like, I just think that without the Burning Flames Pyro's beanie on the loadout, it just wouldn't be my loadout, so it had to come on the list purely for that reason, that it's my hat, you know? Coming up next on the list is an unusual that, at the time, I really didn't use as much as I should have. But I really liked it, and if I had this thing now, I'd be using it and you'd be seeing it in a lot more videos. This was going to be my Scorching Flames Masters Yellow Belt. Of course, the Masters Yellow Belt is a sniper exclusive unusual, which is why at the time you guys didn't see it a lot. I didn't play a lot of sniper, but I'm starting to play sniper a bit more now, and this would be perfect. This Masters Yellow Belt is of course a misc as well, and the loadout I used it in was with the Starduster and the Corona Australis. And because the Corona Australis is such a big hat and it covers the face and the head, you literally couldn't see the yellow belt, so it looked like I had a Scorching Flames Corona Australis, which definitely turned a lot of heads in trade servers. Overall, this is just a loadout I really miss using, and I definitely would invest in one of these again, as the Masters Yellow Belt, if you combine it with near enough any hat, is just not noticeable. At number 7 on the list, we have the second killer exclusive on the list, and it was between this and Circling Heart, but I decided this just has to trump it, it's more expensive, and I prefer the effect. This is going to be my Green Energy Killer exclusive. And much like the Scorching Flames Brotherhood of Arms, this thing has crashed a ton since I owned it. When I owned it, it was around 900 keys, and now it's over halved in price, coming in at around 400 keys. Nonetheless though, at the time, the killer exclusive was probably the highest tier all class hat, and Green Energy was my favourite mid to high tier effect. Again, I used to use this thing on every single loadout, and I just wouldn't pay 900 keys for it again. It's just kind of crazy to see all of these high tier all class hats dropping in price recently. I'm not sure if there's a reason for that, or people have just decided they don't want to pay so much for all class hats. I'm really not too sure, but it's really interesting to see now, and if I stuck with these unusuals and didn't trade them away, I would have lost a lot of money. These last two items on the list are both the same item, but two of my favourite effects, and these things are very different in effect and price. But the first item I'm going to be talking about is my Green Black Hole Virtual Viewfinder. And I remember I was going after this or the Time Warp Viewfinder for so long, and when I finally got it, I didn't even own it for a very long period of time. But for those of you who don't know, Green Black Hole is one of the robo effects, and I absolutely loved how this effect looked. One thing I really liked about it was, obviously this was an all-class misc, so I could combo it with other effects. Green Black Hole surprisingly worked really well with a lot of effects. I remember in particular, I used it with a Stormy 13th Hour Brown Bomber that I also had at the time, which arguably should have been on the list, but nonetheless, that was a combo I used to use so much, and I absolutely loved how it looked. Once again, the Virtual Viewfinder is an all-class misc, and anytime I get my hands on one of these in unusual form, I generally keep it for a while until a really good offer comes in. Which brings us on to our last item on the list, and probably my favourite unusual that I've ever owned, which was my Bonzo the All-Gnawing Virtual Viewfinder. Now, when I owned this thing, it was one of one. However, I'm pretty sure there was two in existence, and one of them was in a private backpack or something, and I ended up paying around 900 keys for this thing. An all-class Bonzo the All-Gnawing misc was just absolutely insane to have. I didn't have a huge amount of keys left over to buy items to combo it with, but I made do, and this thing featured in near enough every one of my loadouts for all the time period I had it. And I ended up selling it to a fellow TF2 YouTuber who doesn't make videos anymore, I believe, but anyone who's been in the TF2 community for a while may remember Kadamono. I ended up selling it for him for around 1,000 keys, so I made roughly 100 or so keys profit, but it was really sad to see that thing go. But nonetheless, I'm pretty sure it went to a good home. I'm sure Cad got some good use out of it. But guys, that's just about it for this video. If you did enjoy, please do remember to leave a like and let me know your thoughts down below. Maybe let me know down below as well what your favourite unusual you've ever owned is. And we can maybe have a little discussion about it. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. Once again, leave a like if you enjoyed. Again, apologies if the editing or the quality or anything on this isn't quite right. It's because I'm not at home at the moment, so I can't record my own background footage, and I'm using like a B-Tech editing software, so apologies if the quality isn't up to scratch. Thank you guys for sticking with me, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Peace.